One of the most common fertility options right out there, or that at least I've heard about, I think most women, is egg freezing, right? And it's become this, I don't know if it's a more recent boom where you enter your 30s, and like I know every woman that I know who's in her 30s has either already done it or have been thinking about doing it, right? So what do you think about egg freezing as an option, and in what ways do you think that its marketing might be misleading nowadays?
It's a very good question. So I have done a lot of research on egg freezing, and I'm a big proponent of telling people that it's an option and educating people about their fertility and about what they can do to potentially preserve their fertility if it's right for them. And people in their 30s, the fertility starts to go down. It goes down more, after the age of 35 than in the early 30s, although it can start a bit earlier. And I think it's a really powerful technology for the right person. Mm-hmm. It's not that everybody who's in their early 30s needs to do egg freezing or should think about it. The likelihood of having infertility in general in the population is somewhere between probably 1 in 6 or 1 in 8, depending on kind of the study that you're looking at, which means that most people, thankfully, are not going to have infertility. Either 5 out of 6 people or 7 out of 8, depending on where you're looking, are not going to require any fertility treatment. For people who are pretty sure they want to have a biological child, and it's not something that's necessarily on the horizon, I think it's a good option to educate about. But there are a lot of limitations to the technology, and I think it's really important that we tell people what egg freezing can do, but equally as importantly, what it can't do. And it's not that egg freezing can prevent infertility. It's just another tool that could potentially allow a person to have a biological child later in life. But there's no number of eggs that can guarantee a live birth. And there are most people who freeze their eggs who won't need to return to use them because they won't have infertility. And so it's really not an insurance policy. There is no guarantee. And I think it's really important that we tell people who do egg freezing that there is a risk of regret. It's a costly thing. Very often it's not covered by insurance. And so there is a good chance that you freeze those eggs and you never need to use them, either because you decided not to have a child, which is perfectly fine, or because you wanted to have a baby, a biological child, and you didn't have trouble. And so I think that people who freeze their eggs need to know that, number one, there's no number of eggs that can guarantee a baby. And number two, you might need to do multiple cycles to kind of reach your fertility preservation goals. And more likely than not, you're not going to need them. So I think if we educate people about this option, it's another tool that can potentially be used to have a biological child, but that there's not a guarantee, then we're empowering people with the knowledge to make their own choice. Mm-hmm. But do I think it's right for every single person walking through the door? No. Mm-hmm. I think it's really a very personal decision. And when we counsel people about this, it has to be in a personalized way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that financial aspect is just such a huge one to consider, right?
Yes.
Solely that for many people who maybe just it's a lot more burdensome for people whose financial situation is just you're stretching it to be able to make this choice.
Yes.
And I think if the belief is that this is going to ensure that I'll have kids no matter what, people are going to go for it, right?
Yeah.
And so, as you say, knowledge and just being informed and educated about it, so that pros and cons to make the best decision for you is just so key.
Definitely. And there's been a lot of talk about, if we're offering this technology, are you encouraging people to have children later? Mm-hmm. And are we telling people that they're definitely going to be able to conceive a pregnancy when they're 40? And I think that there's going to be some truth to that, right? A lot of people who treat people with egg freezing, there's a financial incentive for that, obviously. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really important to know, who is giving you the advice and where it's coming from. And obviously with social media, people are much more open about their egg freezing journeys at this point. Mm-hmm. But, finding a team that you can trust to kind of go through the pros and the cons is critical.
Like this video? It's just a taste of what's in the Unapparent podcast. Watch the full episode here.